Hello everybody, welcome to this edition of Mr. J's Geek Corner. Like we talk about anything and everything that is geek, whether it be TV, comics, movies, or video games. And as y'all know, on last week's show, I named over my top 10 favorite video games ever. And it got me thinking, and I said before, my wife definitely recommended that idea for the last video. And it got me, and it spurred an idea of my own in my head of some of the worst video games I've ever played. And let me go ahead and tell you, I've had to really shorten this list because I have played some crappy games. Whether it just be the demo or the actual game itself, they just stink. As to not end up being here all day and just end up running into being a 2-hour video, I've had to shorten it to being the top 5 worst video games I've ever had the displeasure of playing. And the first one, number 5, I don't have any of these games personally, or I have owned them. And let me just say, I've traded them in. At least a couple on here I've traded in. One I kept for nostalgia's sake. But there's at least one on here that I've never had, but I've played. And that is, as I said, the first one is, at number 5, is one that I have the predecessor of, but the second one is just, I thought about getting it, but it just was not that good. And that is Legends of Wrestling 2. I mean, to me, it is not as good as the first one. I mean, I like the fact they have Sting in it, and maybe the Ultimate Warrior, but the game was just not all that good to me. I mean, it's been a while since I played it, so I may be wrong. But to me, it was not as good as the original, where I actually got to create Superman. I had to create like Superman and a bunch of other characters that looked like they're about perfect likeness to them and everything. But in that game, it's just so many limits on what you could do. I mean, it's just so many limits. I mean, it was not as good as the first one. I mean, the first one had limits, and some might say that was a horrible game, but by standards, it ain't the best wrestling game. Or Legends of Wrestling ain't the best wrestling game in the world, but it's still fun. And 2, to me, just was not as fun as 1 for whatever reason. As I said, I may be wrong, but for right now, I'm just saying that was one of the worst games I ever played. Because to me, it was more annoying than the other one. Let me tell you, to me, it just felt like it was more annoying. And to me, that's why it made number 5. I said it could always change, but right now it's going to number 5. Number 4, I didn't bring it here with me, but I have this game just for nostalgia's sake. I didn't sell it, but it is just the worst, one of the worst wrestling games I've ever played, if not the worst. And that is WWF WrestleMania for the original NES. It is, if y'all have played this game, it is terrible. You know how terrible it is. It is horrible. It's unplayable. I mean, if you know how to play it, then kudos to you. But I did not know. I can never get anything to work on this game. I couldn't get anybody to jump off top rope, do a body slam, leg drop, anything that's supposed to be any semblance of. I could not get anything to work right, except to just make them run back and forth off the ropes and listen to that same annoying, obnoxious music over and over and over again while you're doing it. It's terrible. It's just horrible. I imagine probably the other ones later on were better, but this being probably the first WWF game that ever got put out for Nintendo, it's terrible. It's just horrible. And I know it probably should be up there number 2, but I've got one up there that's just at number. I've already got one. I'd probably up there at number 2 where another WWF game is, but I'll get more into that later. And number 3 is a PS2 game that I had the displeasure of playing, and it's just another one of them uncontrolled, unable to control. It's just a terrible game. I think it was called Music Maker. I can't even remember the exact name, but I just think it was called Music Maker for the PS2. And that's all you essentially do. You mix music. You try to play music editor and edit together songs that you can save on your memory card. But the thing is, it would take me about the whole dad blame card for one song. And all I did was create this mishmash of junk. I just couldn't ever do it. It was not fun at all. It was not fun. And so I mean, they already had like pre-sampled pieces of music and everything. It was horrible. And I traded it in along with number 2 on my list to get another game that was and numerous others just to get games that was better. And as I said, it was just terrible, and I don't play it. Don't play wherever you do. If you've managed to master the game, good for you. But I just think it's terrible. And number 2 is the said WWF game on my list I mentioned earlier, and I said that WrestleMania for the NES probably should be at this spot. But I put this up here at this spot because to me it's even worse than that, because the fact of the generation of game it was, and it was still terrible. And that is WWF Warzone for the PS1. The reason I put it ahead of such a horrible game as WrestleMania for the NES, WrestleMania has an excuse for being a bad game. What's this one's excuse? It has these, you had to punch in these codes. It won't even tell you the moveset of how to do any of the wrestlers. You had to punch in all these codes, like about 3 or 4 button codes. I mean, you had to do that with like the WCW games, but with WCW it was a whole lot easier. But with the WWF games, it was more complicated. You had to punch in like 4 or 5 button codes just to do one move, one simple move. I mean, and in the way you kept trying to, the codes were difficult to enter. Even for the finishing move, you had to have the daggone strategy guide to give you all the wrestlers' move sets, which they should have given you in the dead blame booklet that came with the game. You had to have what the WCW games did. They told you. I mean, when it came later on with the other games, the early WCW games, they gave you every major move set in that game, like the how to do their major moves like they do in the ring in real life, and then the finishers. In Warzone, they wouldn't even tell you how to do that. I had to sneak a peek at an old game. Just what happened. I had to sneak a peek at an old game guide somewhere and found out how to do maybe 2 moves. And even after a while, that got difficult to do. It was overcomplicated. It was not fun. It wasn't as fun as like in the future when they started making like SmackDown. They started like SmackDown 2, SmackDown for the PlayStation 2 and everything. When it got for the other SmackDown games, it got better, move-wise. But like Warzone, the ones when Acclaim was making them, they were terrible. It were terrible. And I'm glad that THQ took over making the PlayStation, took over the WWE games, because it's so much more, it's so much better. It's so much more fun and better to play and easier to play and get to do the moves and everything like you want to. But Warzone is just terrible. It's too complicated and it's not fun at all. And I'm glad that, I traded that along with a Music Maker and along with a bunch of other horrible games I had for another game. But that's for another day. And lastly, number 1 was another game I traded in for. I will say it was for Revenge of the Sith for the PS2. I traded all these 3 games in along with a couple of others for. And this game is probably the worst PS1 game I ever had the displeasure of putting in my console and playing. And that was Dukes of Hazzard Race for Home. I'm assuming it's called Race for Home. But it was just... You think a game we get to drive to General Lee would be fun. It wasn't. It was hard to control. You kept trying to steer. It was hard to steer the car. Every 5 seconds, it was watch it, Bo. Dang it, Bo. Watch it, Bo. Dang it, Bo. Watch it, Bo. Dang it, Bo. I was about to rip the thing right out the console with the game going and throw it out the window like a frisbee, and shoot it like a clay, shoot it like a clay. I mean, it was terrible. Yeah, a game like that is only good for using when you're shooting like the little clay disc things with a shotgun. That's about all it's good for, is used as a clay disc, because it's terrible. It makes you want to go out in the yard and burn it. It was terrible. It was a terrible, terrible game. I mean, I got it for I got it 1 year as a gift, but it was terrible. I mean, a game where all you do is drive a horrible looking rendition of a famous car that is completely undrivable, and all you hear from your passenger is "Watch it, Bo, dang it, Bo" all the time. You get tired of it. And so many times I never bought one laying in the trash can, but I didn't. I went and got my money's worth out of it. And to me, that is the worst game for the PS2, for PS1 I've ever played. And the worst game, period, that I've ever played. I mean, I've never played a game that terrible, but it's just, ugh. But what do y'all think? Do y'all disagree about this list? Do y'all agree with this list? What is the worst game y'all have ever played? Let me know. As always, drop your comment in the comment box. I'd love to hear what y'all have to say. I'd love to hear what y'all think is the worst game y'all ever played. I really would love to hear from you. And I guess that's all for this week's edition of Mr. J's Geek Corner. Hope y'all enjoyed it. And as always, if you have any comments about the show whatsoever, drop your comment in the comment box. Like, subscribe, share, and share with all your friends. And you have any comment, if you have any if y'all have any ideas about things y'all want, about something you want to hear me talk about on the show, drop me a comment in the comment box. I'm always looking for fresh, new subjects and things to discuss and talk about on the show. So drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your ideas. You don't ever know when it may be made to an episode of Mr. J's Geek Corner. So drop your ideas in the comment box. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your ideas. I'll see y'all next time.